Welcome to another episode of Courageous Me. And I'm super excited today because we've got another fella, which is very unusual. And I'm very picky about the guys that I have on the show because I want those that really are going to give us some juice, that are going to go deep and share some wisdom that a whole lot of women that might be listening in will go, yeah, I found that really valuable. And when I first met our next guest, his name is Utkarsh Narang. Now, I'm going to get you to say that because I'm totally already ball set up, but this is all about being real, okay? He's the founder of Ignited Neurons, and he's also a learning consultant and coach. And he's amazing. When I spoke to him for the first time, literally, I didn't want the conversation to end. So you're in for some really big learnings, a whole lot of fun, and a whole lot of wisdom at the same time. So on that note, Utkarsh, what excites you to have a conversation with me today about courage?
First of all, thank you, Kim. I'm privileged to be here and for making the cut of the fellas that come to your conversation.
You're only the
You know,
third.
third. So yeah, I'm lucky number three. It's fascinating when you introduce me. There are so many big words there, but I'm just a human being who's not ready to give up in life. That's how I love to define myself as. And we all, as the name of the podcast goes, right? We all seek courage because that's what kind of keeps us going. But sometimes courage is the right reverse, also, Kim, where we say that we have had enough. It's time to take a pause. Even that to me is courage. So looking forward to our conversation today and seeing where it goes.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So before we get into the juice, could you just share a little bit about who you are? I know you have done that then, but a little bit about who you are and what you do. And then can you share when was a moment where you really had to reach in and find some courage? And I don't care how far back you go, personally or professionally, but when was a moment that really stood out for you as, yeah, that was courage?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question and takes me back so many years and brings me back again to this moment that you and I are spending here. So 40 years on the planet. This year will be 40. They say it's a milestone. I don't really believe in milestones, but that's a conversation for another day. I think over the years, all I've kind of tried, Kim, is to live my life to the fullest because I really feel that this human life is a really precious gift, and we cannot not listen to our heart. We cannot do things that we really want to do and keep going a track that maybe our parents, maybe the society, maybe our current relationships have put us on. So that's what I'm up to, living my life fully. Overall, I'm an executive coach. I've given a TEDx speech, written a book, done a few things in life which carry out for like the outer success. So I had to do that because one got to pay the bills. And then I have two boys who my wife and I enjoy raising here in Melbourne, where we're finding our footing because it's been only 2 years since we moved here from India. So that's been kind of the current state of things. And when you ask this question about courage, uh, I never thought courage was that important of an emotion, right? Or part of me was feeling like you're born with courage, and that's how I've seen myself also be, Kim. I used to be a physical therapist, a physiotherapist for some, and I studied my master's in orthopedic physiotherapy, opened my clinic. I did that so I had three clinics back home in India. My parents were both doctors, so it was kind of the path that was laid out for me, right? That you got to become a doctor too. But then on that journey, there came a point where I felt like I'm not satisfied and I need to do more. I think that was the first moment when I chose to be courageous and told my parents that I got to find another path for my life, and I don't think the path that I'm on is the one for me. That moment I very vividly remember because in India there's like a lot of societal pressure, for a lack of better words, where it seems that what your parents have kind of thought for you is the right path to take. There are several high percentage marriages that are still arranged marriages. There are professions kids choose because their parents want them to be on that path. Our whole lives kind of go in pursuit of that moment that, oh, can I make my parents proud of me? And to then be in a position to tell them that the path that we together chose for me to become a doctor is not the right one for me. I think that was the moment, Kim, I realized that courage is something that I really have within me, and it had to come out.
Oh, and had you wanted to be a doctor. And when I say wanted to, maybe,
Yeah.
that because that was society's expectation, it was
Yeah.
your parents' expectations of you, was that kind of drilled into you? And did you actually feel that as you were growing up?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I did not ever feel like I was pressured upon that. Oh, you have got to become a doctor. But it
Yes.
was something that from a very young age, your dad's a physician, and we had a clinic where I was like, we would be living on the first floor, and the clinic was right there in the on the ground floor. And so we would come back from school. Dad would be hanging there. We would go and play cricket with him, my sister and I. And so it never felt that someone's pressurizing me to become a doctor. So very early I thought that's the only path you have, and that's who I want to become. So it maybe I did not know even otherwise that what else could I be. And growing up in the 1980s and 90s, I think the norm was either you could be a doctor, you could be an engineer, or if you're from a maybe a different family, then maybe a lawyer would be a third one. But between these three, I think doctor made sense to me.
I love those three choices. Forget about if you had wanted to be an artist or a dancer or something
Oh
like
no, what is wrong with you?
that. Oh, I love that. And just in saying that, and as somebody who also I grew up spending a lot of my dreams of becoming a doctor, so I do understand how that feels. But were you good at kind of like the maths and the science and the more traditional topics at
Yeah,
school
yeah.
that when people think of a doctor, they're the ones they think of? Were they kind of in your wheelhouse? Were you interested in them?
Oh, absolutely. I loved all those subjects, whether it was physics or a maths or a chemistry or biology. And then I remember, uh, and I often say, when I went to college, which was how old was I? Many decades ago. I was about 17, 18 years old, right? That's the best thing that came out of uni for me was actually my wife, because she and I met there and we've been together since then. So I often say that the degree that I got from my uni is not coming of use anymore, but my wife is still with me. So that's a great outcome of my 4 years in that degree. But I did always do really well in those subjects, and even with the clinics, I clearly remember this was 2003 when I went into like the college, and our seniors said, what the hell are you doing? This is a time when physiotherapy was not something that was very popular in India. And it seemed that that's not the right path to take again. But I wanted to be there because I thought when you heal someone of their pain because of any orthopedic condition, that's a great message. And so I really succeeded on that path, Kim. I had three clinics in different parts of Delhi. I had a fitness center, a huge clientele. So it was all great on the outside, but on the inside I felt like, is this it? Am I just like this frog in a well who's gonna be a physiotherapist all his life, run these clinics, take care of his patients, have great conversations, and then one day die? To me, that reality was something that I was not kind of fully kind of aligned with, and that's why things had to change.
Wow. Oh God, this is a really good one. So when and there's obviously this feeling that's been brewing, it wasn't like it was just one moment. Or
Nah,
was it one moment where
nah,
the feeling had been brewing and that time was where you said, okay, enough's enough. I need to do something different. Talk to me
yeah,
about how that kind of played out from just being a feeling that this is not what I want forever to
yeah,
when you actually made a decision to either, I don't know if you'd verbalized it with your wife, and when
yeah,
you actually then had to tell your parents.
yeah. I think there was this the word I've been using is dissatisfaction, and I think the other word that comes is like misalignment. That yes, I'm going in there, but I'm dreading that Monday morning. Right? I'm getting paid because of it. Life's comfortable. I know my shit, and so there are no challenges at all, right? You can go and in your sleep do that work. So in terms of, again, the pay, the work, the people I get to speak to and connect with, all making sense. But from the inside it seemed that this cannot be it. And I was someone who was kind of very frequently kind of experimenting, right? I would start a website, I would find clientels to do something else, I would do some. And I clearly remember this was back in 2012, and this was like my final push came that I still want to make physical therapy happen for me, and I want to stay a doctor all my life, but I want to kind of expand my impact on the world. And so I started reaching out to. So I was in Delhi, which is like the northern part of India. I
Mhm.
started reaching out to friends in a Mumbai or in Bangalore, which was like southern or different parts of India, and I said, I can take care of your shoulder pain or your back pain over a Skype call. And they're like, Utkarsh, that's not possible. I'm like, trust me, if I tell you the right exercises and you do those things with me on that 30-minute consultation call, you will heal and you will feel better. But this was a time when the world was not ready for COVID had not come. The world was not ready for that digital kind of application of healthcare. Now everyone's happy calling their doctor. Now everyone's happy with the video call. But that was not the time. And so then 2012 is kind of, that was like the final nail in the coffin, that nothing's working out. It's time to shift gears. And that's when kind of the 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 waves started to rise and then allow me to kind of find what's next in my journey.
Okay, so firstly, what did you actually do? You knew that that wasn't all that it could be, that life had to have something more. How did you know what that was going to be, or what was it going to look like? Or did you not know? And what were the actual steps
Yeah.
that you took? And
Yeah.
what was the conversation at home with your wife? Like, how did that play out when you
Yeah.
said to her that, I just don't want to do this anymore?
Yeah.
And yeah, where did all that go?
So it was all strange for them, right? Because my mom is a PhD in botany, and so she took a job and she's still teaching there. She's like 62 right now, and she'll retire from that job in a few years. Dad went to one clinic and stayed there for like 30 years. My wife also has this mindset that she'll stay in the single profession, and that's what the world's grown up with, right? If you become a lawyer, you stay a lawyer for 50 years, and then you one day die, and that's about it. But for me, that idea was very kind of 20th century, and something had to shift. But as I kind of go and then speak to others about it, they're like, because that's not possible. What will you do? You don't have any of the skills. So part of me was really grappling with this thought that maybe there's nothing that is in front of me, and I'm just trying to kind of have these beautiful dreams which are not going to come true. But what I started to do, Kim, was that I started to meet new people, started to network, started to see what else is possible in the world. And as I was doing all of that, had those conversations, the difficult conversations with the family, what then emerged was that my sister actually was in a part-time position with a company, and she was on the dining table, and I clearly remember on the dinner table she's watching some videos on a laptop. And I was like, this is intriguing. What are you doing? Is this like a real job? And she's like, yeah, it's a real job. I work with a professor at Columbia Business School in New York. It's a great company. We have two people, so we enjoy, and it's a small stint for me. I'm like, can you introduce me to this person? I might be able to work for them. And she's like, I can do that, but what would you do? And it's very, very kind of direct question, because a physical therapist in a corporate environment,
Mm,
what would he do?
mm.
But chance be that she introduced me to the person, and the founder was traveling from New York to New Delhi, and they were. And today, as we record this, Kim, if I would have been in that same job till now, today would have been my 12th anniversary, because 15th January is when I joined that company. So yeah, gives me these beautiful memories. So I went to that person. We had a conversation, and he's like, Utkarsh, what would you do? And I'm like, I will do anything and everything that it will take for me to succeed in the role that you'll give me. I don't want to define it. You want me to do marketing? I'll figure that out. You want me to do sales? I'll figure that out. I'll do whatever it takes. And they said, you're we are a two people company. We're looking for more talent. So since you're coming with like a good recommendation, maybe we'll give you a chance. And that was the start of something beautiful, Kim. Just like that, they gave me 3 months to prove my worth, and I went in every single morning with this zeal that I'll make this happen. I'll not let this chance go to waste, and I succeeded.
Oh, wow. But I love that. I mean, that's courage in itself, right? That you're putting yourself out there to do something where you've got no skills and experience. Yes,
Yeah,
you've got a lot in the physiotherapy space
yeah,
and what you were doing. No skills,
yeah,
but you're saying, like, I will learn it. I will
yeah.
just do it. So, what did you actually end up doing?
So I started in marketing, and
Okay.
I lasted about 4 weeks. Because because what happened was, so there was this call with a marketing agency in the US, and since there's a time difference, I was in India back then. It was, I think, 10 p.m. my time, which was about whatever, maybe noon New York time, and I slept through the call. Can you believe it? Uh, I completely forgot that there is a call. I slept through it. At 9:30, I went to bed. That I'll wake up the next day. I'll do the drill. And at that time, I was running my clinic still, and I was doing this full-time job. So it was like a 16-hour day for me. And so
Okay.
I was so drained. I slept through. The next morning I wake up and I see an email. Utkarsh, you were supposed to be on a call last night. I was like, this is the end of my journey. They'll now tell me, Utkarsh, why don't you go back to your physical therapy day, do your physiotherapy, and that's all you're made for. Uh, but they gave me another chance, and I still am grateful for that moment. Had a conversation, was very honest that I just slept because I was tired and I did not know how to use the Google Calendar at that time. I did not know how to set these things up. It was my physiotherapy clinic did not need a Google Calendar, but the corporate world needs it. And so I said, give me one more chance and I'll prove that I'm worth. And so multiple experiments started to happen, Kim. Long story short, there was this moment when I realized that this company, what they did was they produced digital content by filming video lectures with professors at the business school. And then they would sell that to corporates across the world. So I realized that if I learn the skill of filming and editing, then I'll become indispensable. And it seemed like a far stretch again. But again, that courage came back. That Utkarsh, you have to and you can make this happen. And so I started to invest myself, learned my way through how to edit videos, how to film content, did all of the things, and then went to the founder again that I'm ready. I can start to film content for you. And now that's a company that had BBC producers who were kind of doing the work for them. And they're like, Utkarsh, but you don't know how to do it. I'm like, I do know, I have it in me, just trust me. But no one agreed. And I agreed. But that's where the confidence comes back in, Kim,
Mm.
that I believe in myself. So what I did was, in my drawer in the office, I kept a small little camera. There were those small handy cams at that time. And I said that there'll be a day when you will need something to be produced on like an immediate kind of a basis. And I'll have my camera, I'll have my microphone ready. And that opportunity came. So what I'm trying to say is that we all need to have the courage to act, because until unless we act, nothing's going to happen for us.
Oh, and this is so fascinating because something like, filming and video and editing and
Yeah,
all of that has nothing to do with physiotherapy. It's
not at all.
completely different. But you backed yourself.
Yeah,
You thought, no, I can do this. I can teach myself the skills
yeah,
and to a level that's going to be good enough that someone else is going to actually be paying me to do that. Were
yeah.
you always like that as a kid? Were you ever did you ever have that level of inner confidence that, hey, I can do this? Was that sort of a trait of yours?
I think so, and I don't know what led to it. Maybe it was the parenting, maybe it was the school. I can't pinpoint to one thing, Kim, but it was always that there's this. I mean, how hard could something be? I'll fail. I'll not do well, but what the hell? Who cares? Because it seems right that in the moment, if I don't speak to you in a coherent basis, and if I don't have our listeners find something of meaning in this moment in our podcast, then I've failed. But have I really? This is one of those moments that's going to be added to my whole life. And hopefully, I'll live to be 70, 80, 90, 100 years maybe. And so then this is just a moment. But what I've always chosen, Kim, on the other side is that I'm going to come here and do my freaking best, because that's all I control. And I don't control what the listener's going to gain from it. I don't control what the output is going to be. But and
Mm.
so as I'm speaking with you, actually, what's coming to me is that maybe it's the Indian spirituality, the Indian mythology that we've kind of grown with, which my dad, my mom, grandparents used to watch at home, read those books that are spiritual in nature. I think that's what's kind of coming back to me. That maybe that's what's leading to that confidence, where I'm fully attached to the action, but fully non-attached to the outcome.
Okay, this is beautiful. Okay, this is just spectacular. So, have you always had some spiritual input through learning that from when you were how young can you remember when that sort of started?
Oh, I would be like 4 or 5 years old, because I remember and my grandma very sweetly used to tell me that Utkarsh, you have a body, and that body is 5 years old, but then you have a soul which is ageless. And at that moment, I would not understand that, right? But then she would say that maybe you have a soul of a mature person, because the way you talk to us, the way you behave is different. So maybe that's where it's coming from. So that's one data point to what you're asking. And then
Mm.
during even my physiotherapy days, Kim, I would take care of a lot of patients who were elderly, who were in their 70s and 80s. And I clearly remember I had a patient who was about, I think, about 85 years old, and she suffered a paralysis where there was stroke in her brain, and she was unable to move half of her body, and she was unable to talk. But I would go to her house to give her exercises to make sure there are no bed sores and things like that. And she would laugh and express with me all her thoughts and emotions and words through just actions. And her children used to tell me that because this 1 hour of her life is something that's so precious to her. So all of those conversations about spirituality, about God, I think they come back somehow.
Oh, and do you know, just hearing you say that when you were 5, you learned about, the physical body being different
Oh
to,
yeah,
say, the soul and the age of the soul. This is stuff I find that a lot of people like me are learning about in our later years.
yeah,
To have learnt that when you were younger, and to, even though that wasn't necessarily the journey that you went down directly,
yeah.
you had that instilled in you and that kind of thinking and what have you. Is this why you said earlier, when you mentioned that it was coming up towards 40 years on planet Earth in this body, that you don't believe in milestones? Tell me about that.
Think so. You're making me go deep. This
Oh,
is
I want to go
fascinating.
deep.
This is fascinating. I think so, and it's been a journey where I remember as a young adult, maybe in my early 20s, I used to aspire for, like, when am I buying the next BMW, or when am I buying the next big car, the next watch. But now those aspirations are gone away. When am I touching another life? When am I helping someone live full lives? I think those are the experiences are more precious, and that's why I think the counting of the milestone has gone away.
Oh, I love that. And so, and have you done, although this almost sounds silly, because I'm assuming if you've started off from a very young age learning about spirituality and all of that, you are very, very self-aware. Very, very self-aware. You're very aware of humans beyond just the physical stuff, being a physiotherapist. How have you got to that place? Like, what have you done? Um, what have you, had to go out of your way to learn or pursue? How's that sort of played out?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a journey, right? And it has many different uh, kind of touch points to it. One is just the experience of meditation, right? Which I kind of again, going back to that same institute which I was a part of from 2013 to 20. The founder there was a very spiritual person, and for about 8 years we were in a space where uh, our offsites used to happen in ashrams, in beautiful places where we would come together and meditate, and we would have these deep conversations about a life and our business, and we wanted to kind of grow that. But they were the conversations are always inner driven, so that's coming back to me. And I think so meditation has played a massive role. And I remember as a physiotherapist, I used to take a break during my afternoons to just zone out and spend some time with myself. I used to, instead of reading self-help books, I used to read the Bhagavad Gita, which kind of is, I think, where things started to get formed, which the whole principles of non-attachment, principle of doing your best action, all of that are coming from that aspect of the journey.
And you did mention that a little bit earlier, which I wanted to follow up on. Talk to me about that. How does that play out in your world? This especially this non-attachment piece, because as human beings, especially Western humans that
Yeah,
just go along with life, that whole attachment piece is massive.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. How's that
But
play with you?
Mm, I mean, I find it fascinating, right? Because we can talk about attachment, but what is it that we ultimately take away with us? Which is nothing.
Mm.
And we came in as little babies. Hopefully, all of us will die one day, because that's how life's kind of the span of life is structured for us. But what should we be attached for? And it's not that I don't want the outcome. It's
Mm.
not that when I post on LinkedIn, I don't want anyone to see it. It's not that when I do this podcast, I don't want millions of people to see it. It's not that I will do a TEDx and I'll feel like, oh, no one should watch it. I want it to go to 10,000. I want it to go to 100,000. But I will not work hard for just the outcome. And the nuance here is
Mm.
that you do your best in terms of how you can be the best on the stage, best in the interaction, best in this conversation. But what happens as a result of that best is not something that you control. You seek it, but you don't control it.
Yeah, but also accepting that, because I do see, especially, working with a lot of high performers and overachievers, that the disappointment that comes if the
Yeah.
outcome is not achieved,
Yeah.
and then the dissatisfaction that comes because the process is no longer, upon reflection, as enjoyable as it could have been, because
Yeah.
the outcome, they're attached to the outcome. And I know that with a lot of the work that you're doing now, what advice would you give to someone that does still get very attached to outcomes
Yeah.
to deal with it more kindly?
Yeah. I think the big question that comes again and again, Kim, is that when you get disappointed, or when you get into a loop of, say, overthinking, or when you get into a loop of feeling anxious about something, in that moment, what do you really control? And why I ask that question is, and I'll tell you, I'll give you an example. So I took a break for 2 weeks between December 20 and January 6th. So 2 weeks of no work. For someone who loves work, that already is driving anxiety. Then you still have kids break here in Australia, so they're at home for another 3-4 weeks. You know the drill, Kim.
Mhm.
Now part of me is like, it was day before yesterday. I think I was lying in my bed at night, and I started to think, oh, this had to happen in the business, this had to happen, and that had to happen. I had to reach out to this client, and da, 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 da. And the brain started to go into a loop, into a downward spiral. And I paused myself. But Utkarsh, in this moment, as you lie down here at 10 p.m. or 10:30 p.m., what do you control? Nothing. What can you do about this? You can either go and on a Friday night, you can go and send emails to people, but will they respond to them? Not really. So what do you control again? Nothing. What can you do then? I can go to sleep and be restful. And to me, this questioning yourself, just being a little bit more self aware of what you're feeling, what is making you feel like that, and what can you do about it? I think that makes my journey easy, Kim. And I think if listeners were to try this model, I'm 99.9% sure that ultimately we don't control a lot. If you control it, go change it. If you don't control it, go to sleep and enjoy.
I'm sure there are plenty of people listening that are usually awake at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Go, oh, fruit! I've got to do this and I've got to do that. I forgot to do this. Oh my goodness! And being one of those for so long,
Mhm.
it's what are those things that can almost bring that back so that you can get that beautiful night's sleep, because there's nothing you can do at that point, or get out of bed and go and send the email.
Correct.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
get it out of you. Absolutely. How
Yeah.
did you find then, if you did grow up with a more spiritual background, but yet parents in a very scientific space and
Mhm.
field, which you then went into, how
Mhm.
do you find that sort of blending of the more spiritual and the more sciencey? How do you see that playing out in the world?
Yeah, I think it gives you a very balanced view of the world, where as I'm saying that, I'm also really kind of sometimes feeling that, am I like too laid back on that? That yes, I want to work hard, and that's a thing that I'm role modeling to my kids as well. That you do the things that you love, you spend time making things happen, which you can control.
Mm.
But would that also make them feel like, what the hell, the future is not in my control, so why the hell do I have to worry about it? But you still need to make the right choices, and I think that's where the whole uh, right balance of spirituality and science comes at play. That certain things in this world that are happening right now were supposed to happen like that, but we as human beings always have a choice, and how we take that choice is what is kind of in our control. And I think that's where the mindset Kim also comes in. That what mindset are we operating in our day to day that will allow us to do beautiful things, and choose beautiful things for ourselves and others.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that makes so much sense. So tell me, how did you handle the conversation with your parents that you were no longer going to be in the medical space?
Yeah, I think that conversation was much easier, Kim, and I'll tell you why. Because after that, 8 years later, when I had moved to this leadership institute, I had built my life, and I was doing really well. There came a moment in 2020, which is when the pandemic came about to all of us, that in that moment I said to them, and again I remember, again sitting on a dining table, my mom, dad, and my wife sitting there, and I told them that at the end of this year, which is 2020, I'm going to quit my job. And they're like, why the hell would you do that? And I told them, because I feel that I'm capable of doing something much more, much larger, and much better for the world than what I'm doing right now. And they're like, but Utkarsh, that's not possible, because people during COVID are losing their jobs. They are being thrown out of their work. They're being asked to stay at home, and you'll not be able to get a job because your resume does not match the work that you've done over the last 10 years. And it was a very logical fear.
Mm.
But I think that's my problem, Kim, that the courage that I have surpasses that fear very quickly. And even though in that moment I was driven by fear, which is what I speak about in the TEDx, but I
Mm.
was still courageous that I'm going to take this next step and I'm going to prepare for it. I'm going to work really hard for it. I'm going to do all that it takes to succeed. But once I've decided that I'm going to do that, I will end up doing that. So that conversation was a much tougher conversation than the one that happened in 2012.
Isn't that fascinating? But it's so true, isn't it? Like the fear's there, right? And the fear does drive it, and the fear points us in the direction of probably where we need to be going.
Yeah,
But that courage has to just be 1% greater than the fear. The
absolutely.
action or the movement that you're going to take has got to be. And there's, I spend a lot of my time
Yeah.
speaking to people that are so crippled by the fear and they can't get through it or get past it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I also want to know how you actually got to speaking and doing a TED Talk, because
Yeah.
I think that's just wonderful, and writing a book. But also, at this stage, you're back in India. You're now living in Australia. Talk to me.
Yeah.
What happened there?
Does not connect.
No, no.
Yeah.
I'm
So
sure there's courage in here.
absolutely. So it's a more personal story where my wife, she and I, we were both from the healthcare background, and she continued to stay on that path, still is on that path today. And she's an occupational therapist, Kim, and
Mm,
she deals with kids with special needs, autism, ADHD, and it's a it's a really challenging space
mm,
because there is a lot of emotional connect to a child.
mm.
There are a lot of needs, not just of the child himself or herself, but also of the parents, of the family. And so my wife back home in India had a clinic where she had a team of 15 people. They were taking care of kids from all walks of life, and that spiritual, mental, emotional, physical energy that was required for her to take care of her patients, her kids, was taking a toll on her. And so this was about 2022, I think, where she had fibromyalgia, where she would get severe pains all across her body. She was diagnosed with depression and insomnia, and so there would be nights, Kim, where I would wake up in the middle of the night, thirsty or for whatever reason, and I would not find her next to me, and she would be outside. There were moments when she would go out for a walk out of the house, because she was just unable to sleep with all that she was going through.
Yes.
And as we were going through that, she had about all the medicines. We were going to the therapist. We were doing everything that we could, but
Mm,
nothing was working.
yep.
And so again, there was this fear, right? That what if I lose her? What if uh,
Mm,
my life partner, and hopefully we stay together till the end of our lives? What if I don't have her in my life, and then what? And so
mm,
there was this fear of losing her. And so then both of us kind of started to have a conversation that maybe it's time to pull away from all this madness, take her away from this environment that she's a part of right now. And then the challenge came, like, what's a different environment that we want to be in?
mm,
And we were looking at North America as a possible destination because my sister lives there, her sister lives there,
mm.
but the universe did not plan that for us. And
Yeah.
then this was back in 2021 July. I clearly remember the date. There's a message to her on LinkedIn which says, are you an occupational therapist? We have a job for you in Melbourne, Australia, and you might be a good fit. And we're like, this could be a scam, because did they not find anyone in Australia, and they're reaching out to us? And why us in India? And we have this desire to
Yeah.
move away, but we did not know what to do. And
And
so,
she hadn't put it out there. She
nah,
hadn't sort of said
nothing,
looking for work or
nothing,
no, nothing.
nothing.
Wow.
She was going about her day to day. Her resume is still saying that she's the founder of her clinic, and this and that. And then just out of nowhere this appears, and again brings me back that when I know this conversation is getting too much into spirituality and science and a lot of things,
Oh, I
but
love it.
that sense of that there is a universal force taking care of you. And so that message dropped into her LinkedIn, and she's talking to me, Utkarsh, what do I do? I'm like, no one's going to do anything over a Zoom call, so you better go and have that interview. And I know she's a very capable occupational therapist, and she got the job. They said, we'll give you a visa, we'll apply for your visa and this and that. They applied for the visa on the 6th of February 2023. On the 14th of February 10 a.m., we get a call from the Australian embassy that our visa has come in and they want us to come to Australia in 2 weeks. And we're like, how do we wrap life in 2 weeks in a country that we've been for forever?
And
But
you've
we
got kids, right?
two kids, 4 suitcases, kids on those suitcases, packed our bags, and one-way ticket to Australia. And again, a lot of fear. I beautifully remember, and still getting goosebumps as we walked out of that airport. That big board that says Melbourne, those lights.
Mm.
Now those lights are. We want to take a picture, right? Because this is the moment. We've traveled halfway across the world to the southern hemisphere to this island. All I knew was like Australian cricket team is an amazing cricket team. They have this Australian Open. That's all we knew. And here we are. We have plans to live in an Airbnb for 2 weeks. No idea where we'll get a home from. So it was just fascinating. And at this time, my business was just setting up in India. I was doing really well. I quit my job in 2021, building my coaching practice, clients trusting me. But then this big thing happened in our life, and here we are. 2 years later, almost 2 years later.
Because she could have just got another job in India.
But the challenge there was that the mindset, so she had her own practice, right? To
Yeah.
sell a business means you
Yeah.
have to shift your identity.
Uh-huh.
And
Okay.
that shifting of identity needs a lot of courage, Kim.
Oh, absolutely it does.
But then the universe shifts things for you, and the universe says that I was preparing you for a bigger leap. And then what do? You be courageous and you get on that train, get on that airplane, because it's worth the journey. It's worth the journey.
Well, what's the worst that can happen?
You'll go back.
You go back.
Yeah. Nothing works out. You go back. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I
Yeah.
find this fascinating, and I've just submitted my book manuscript, and the whole section of it is around identity.
Yeah.
And I've had a number of guests on the podcast as well, where just doing another job, like she could have sold her practice and got a job as an occupational therapist within India, right? She
Correct.
could have done that.
Correct.
But that still keeps her with, she's the identity that she has, the business owner there and what have you. But getting into a whole different country, the whole environment, everything around physically and spiritually, therefore, was changing up. The energy was changing. Everything was changing. So it makes sense. But what I'm fascinated by is that it was a LinkedIn request about this job that she hadn't even instigated or put out there.
Not at all.
And here you are in Australia. So how did you then, with your coaching business that was now getting up and running in India, how did you move that to Australia?
So so the good thing about coaching is that it's all virtual.
Yes.
A lot of it is virtual. So the business kind of continues as usual. Then there's a new challenge, right? And I think as we're speaking about this, I'm realizing now, and I asked this question of my coaches, and I think it'll be a good question for our listeners also to reflect upon, Kim. We associate ourselves to being, I'll talk to myself. I associate myself to being a father, a husband, a son, a sibling, a friend, a coach, a TEDx speaker, an author. But I'm the human first. And I think we forget about that identity.
Yeah.
And I think what we all need to do is to be able to, again, detach ourselves from these beautiful identities, do our best in these identities, but remember that core identity that we have, which is of being the beautiful human being that we are. And since I've done this so many times now, whether it's through the nature kind of forcing me or through my own choice, anytime I get to erase the identity and build a new one, that gives me joy. And that gives me courage. And I think that's where the crux of the conversation lies.
Oh, absolutely. And how do you do that? Like, because identity shifting, whether it's internal or how you show up in the world and external, it's not easy.
Yeah.
And, I often talk about identity. You hear people say, you might be identity 2.0. I talk about, every year or almost. And again, it is using a calendar milestone, but most humans, we understand calendar, albeit whether it's an illusion or not. But we understand by calendar. So each year, I think, so I'm 53. So right now I'm on Kim version 3.0. And each year I think about, who do I want to show up as? And from an internal point of view, what does that look like? But also then, showing up the physical side in the world, how does that look? How do you do that? Because it's not something that everyone finds easy.
I think there's one level deeper that I can push us to go, all of us,
Mm,
right? Which is, we started this conversation at 1:30 p.m. Melbourne time, Kim.
mm,
Right now, 40 minutes later, you and I are different people
mm.
because we've had a deeper conversation. We've
Yeah,
thought about our own journeys. But
yeah.
I was reflecting on my journey, you thought about your own journey, right?
Mm, mm.
So Kim version 3.0 is now 3.0.1.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So what I'm trying to say is that maybe there's no identity. Maybe the identity is so flexible, and it is us who's putting it into a box and trying to then put a bow around it and then trying to live that identity for the rest of our freaking lives.
yeah.
So the question that I'm going to ask us is,
Mm,
if we try to answer this question, who is Utkarsh? If
mm,
I try to answer this question, who is Utkarsh? And you try to answer this question as, who is Kim?
mm.
And you're not allowed to write about your professional achievements,
Yeah, yeah,
no relationships,
yeah,
no education background,
yeah,
no connection to the country, to the planet that you live in. If you were to look at the soul, who is Kim at that level? Who
yeah.
is Utkarsh at that level? And I think that answer, when it starts to emerge, I think that's what allows us to build this flexible identity that you and I are talking about, Kim.
Oh, I completely agree. I wrote about this just a little while ago.
Beautiful.
That like if you were say just I don't know dumped in the middle of a desert,
Yeah,
and everything that you knew was not as it was. So relationships, environment, our physical appearance, our past, our memories, everything that shaped who we are today, and all of that was stripped clear. Who are you? Like, who are you
yeah,
without the stuff that has defined, the human form and the way we're turning up and showing up
correct.
and who are you? And
Yeah,
it's, I love it when, just a very high level asking someone, who are they? And yeah, the first response is, I'm the brother, the mother, the whatever it might be. I
absolutely.
love that you've gone there.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love that this is
yeah,
part of it and that you've done that kind of level of thinking. Do
yeah.
you do this with your clients?
I do. I do. I love this work, and I think, even before how I work with the clients, I want to say that, this moment, Kim, you and I, when we spoke about the podcast, we were thinking about going out for lunch in Melbourne and this and that. But this could be the final time you and I speak, because something might happen to me,
Mm,
or something might happen to you, or maybe the planet will come to pieces. And I'm not going to be kind of predicting a doomsday here. But what I'm saying is that death is inevitable,
mm,
and it walks with us all the time.
mm.
And so, if we can appear in every moment as the best version of ourselves, then how beautiful, it just lightens the load. I think that's what I'm kind of pushing us to. And I love to do this work with clients. I clearly remember there's this person who I just finished a coaching journey with. 6 months ago, they came to me. Uh, they were in pieces. They were doing really well professionally, leading a marketing for a big firm, but from the inside they were broken, because it was all feeling that I'm lost. Where am I going? I'm trying to build these new habits, and they've done the podcast, they've read the self-help books, they've done the resolution, and then, but it does not work. And sometimes you just ask them these deeper questions, and it changes, everything shifts.
And when you can actually feel someone shift, can't you?
Absolutely.
It's quite
Joy.
powerful. Oh,
Joy. Yeah.
so good.
Yeah.
Why TEDx talk, and how did that come about?
Good question. Good. I was writing about this in the morning today. You know, part of me always question, like, why does the world need another TEDx talk?
Yeah.
And why does the world need another book? And why does the world need another LinkedIn post? Or why does the world need anything? Because there's enough in the world already for all of us to consume and practice. But I think what I've realized is, since the TEDx talk, it has about like maybe 7,000 views, Kim, is that every time someone who resonates with that message and resonates with the person standing on that stage, they reach out to me and say thank you. And I think that's why the world needs these things. And that's why we all should try to put our stories out there in whatever shape and form.
So, how did you go about doing it? Because I work with people, particularly women, who are wanting to get their story out there, who are wanting to do more speaking.
Yeah.
And, that's a journey in itself.
Yeah.
So, how did you actually go about doing that?
Again, I'll give you the one word answer, and then I'll give you the story. The
Yeah.
one word answer is the universe conspired for it. And I'll tell you how. since the beginning of my journey as an entrepreneur in 2021, I wanted to give a TEDx talk because I always thought that I've been so courageous. I've been able to leap through careers. I've been able to leap through all the challenges. I've had a partner who's gone through some mental health challenges which are very, very hard for the individual, but also for the partner. And we've made through all of that. And so I always thought I'm going to speak about courage, I'm going to speak about career change. And so I reached out to TEDx organizers. I would reach out to their Instagrams and LinkedIn's, but nothing happened. And then I come to Australia, uh, and this started to happen in 2003, just 4 months on this beautiful land. I started to feel like I don't know people here. So what do? I try and find some networking events. I hate going to networking events. Disclaimer. But then I pushed myself to one where I met another person who's been on this podcast, Kim, Kareem Bakhtar.
Yeah, I was going to say, I reckon I know who this is. Yep.
And he and
I
I
love
had a
her.
conversation. Yeah, we had a conversation, and I met other people there. And few of them, I think, applied for this TEDx in Mornington that was happening, and they posted on their LinkedIn. I was like, this is interesting. But then who's going to allow me to speak in Australia? It's such a different crowd. They would not understand my story. The way I speak is not similar to theirs. The color of my skin. So the imposter started to push me down. That Utkarsh, you don't have a right to be on a TEDx stage in Australia. No one in India allowed you to be on the stage. Then what the hell do you think you are, or who the hell do you think you are, that someone in Australia is going to allow you to do that? And I wanted to push myself down on it and not do it. But then one day, some courage came out of me, which told me, Utkarsh, why don't you just put in the application? And so the application form was out for this one. I applied for it. They called me for the audition, which was already a win. 100 people auditioned for it, Kim. And out of those 100, 12 were selected, or maybe 13 were selected to give the TEDx talk. And I was one of those. And the universe conspired. Who am I to say that I did something extra to achieve this moment? The moment just came to me because maybe the purity of the heart continues.
Oh, I love though that the answer was the universe. It conspired. However,
It,
there were some actions that you took
absolutely.
in alignment
100%.
with that conspiracy
100%.
that got you on to doing that TED talk.
Yeah.
And just for those listening that don't know and haven't listened to it, and of course I'm going to put that in the show notes if people want to jump on board. What was the TED talk about?
Yeah. So the TEDx talk, when it came about me, the first idea I had was that I'm going to talk about courage, because courage is what's most important. Courage is what allows the world to move. Courage is where the action lies.
Yeah.
And so what I do when something beautiful is happening in my life, Kim, is I create my inner circle on a WhatsApp group. And so invited 10 of my buddies, mentors, people who are really powerful support system for me. And I told them that I have this opportunity of giving a TEDx talk, and this is what I'm going to speak about. And out of 10, 9 said, Utkarsh, that's a brilliant idea. The world needs to speak more about courage. Courage is important. But one of them said, but Utkarsh, was it really courage that was driving you? Or was it something deeper? I'm like, what do you mean? And they said, maybe you were afraid of something. I'm like, no, that's not possible. And they said, but why don't you give it some thought, and then maybe we'll talk about it tomorrow. I went back and I started to kind of backtrack all my life from this moment on to the moment I was born. And I realized that it was the fear of losing the love of my life that pushed us to Melbourne. It was the fear of not succeeding in that first leap I took that pushed me to try even harder, do even better. It was the fear of not going against the society that allowed me to be courageous. And so what I realized was that all this while, there's this one word came, that we all are funambulists. And what that word means is that we're all tightrope walkers. And on this tightrope of life, we all have to walk forwards. There's no walking backwards. And there's no other way but to put one step in front of the other. And so, whatever fears are stopping you right now, whatever fears are paralyzing you right now, use those fears to drive yourself to be courageous.
So what did you go back and say to that friend the next day?
Thank you. I agree with you, and that fear was the deeper emotion. Fear was the more innate emotion that's almost a reflex response. I've done a dozen podcasts, but every time I come to another one, I think about the fear that starts to bubble up. That what if what I say does not make sense? And that fear actually allows us to be courageous if we take the right actions. If we don't let that fear paralyze us, Kim. And that's, I think, the journey of life.
Do you think that the more things that you do like this, so the more actions you take where, yeah, the fear's there, but you do them, do you think that helps you take more actions in that space?
I think so. It becomes muscle memory, right?
Yeah.
Where there's no other way. There's only one way, which is to take action. And I remember the founder I used to work with for about 8 years. He used to say that. So we used to travel a lot between Delhi and New York. New York was the headquarters. Gurgaon was our India office. And so he would say that if there was a moment when flights would go on strike, Utkarsh has the confidence and the courage to go watch a YouTube video, build an airplane, and fly that airplane, pilot that airplane, and take it across the oceans to New York. But that's how I've been. That's how I've been raised, hopefully, and yeah, that's how action is what I've known, Kim.
But yet you've got parents that did the one job all their lives.
They did, but they
Yeah,
were brave enough to let their children fly. They're
yeah,
brave enough today to fly to Australia and stay with us for 3 months. They're brave enough to then fly to the US and meet my sister and stay there for 4 months. So I think they're brave in their own way,
yeah, yeah.
and for no fault of theirs, they've grown up in a space where there was scarcity,
Mm,
where India after its independence was just
mm,
learning to take its strides, and that's when they were born in that India which did not have everything. Today, the world's more connected yet very disconnected.
yeah.
So we live in a very different world today. But yeah,
Mm.
so they've been courageous in their own ways.
And that absolutely is true. I completely agree with that. That,
Yeah,
by not even just letting them, because you're a grown up man, right? You can do
yeah,
what you choose, but by
absolutely
supporting you to live a life that was different to theirs, maybe
correct.
different to how they thought their children's lives would play out, but fully
Yeah,
embrace and accept that.
yeah,
That's courage in itself,
that's
just
their
in a
courage.
different form. So,
Absolutely,
yeah. So,
absolutely.
so on that note, oh, a book. You wrote a book. Tell me about the book.
Yeah, so the book is actually a journal, and it's called Ignite Life Journal.
Right.
It's available on Amazon. It's right there in the pink color somewhere there.
Pop it up
Uh,
and show me. And I will actually, for those that are on YouTube, they'll be able to see. But for everybody else, I'll put a link in the show notes.
yeah, so it's actually a journal that
Ignite
allows
Life
people
Journal.
to actually do some exercises, the life circle, the values exercise. So it has questions that you can use to make yourself more courageous and be driven by fear.
Oh, I love it. It's not just going to be a link in the show notes. It's a, if you would like to be more courageous and get past some of those fears that are maybe stopping you from doing the things that you want to do, go and get his journal. Go and
Absolutely.
get it. I'm allowed to plug
Absolutely.
you, my podcast. So on that note, what is the next thing you've got to really reach in and find some courage for?
Such a good question. Now, at this moment, if someone asks me, Utkarsh, how are you, or what are you up to? I say I'm building life one day at a time. And I think it's the courage now to make sure that the noise that comes to me, I don't let that distract me.
Mm,
Because I think focus is something that is really sparse right now. We have so much happening around us, whether it's politically, entertainment wise, the social media platforms, the information that's out there. I think it's very hard to stay focused on one path. So I hope I continue to have the courage and gain the courage to stay focused on the path that I am on.
mm. How do you stay focused? What when you find yourself losing focus and being distracted by everything that's available? How do you get focused back?
I need to share a story for that. So again, going back to this spirituality and the universe of things that we have spoken about, there's this Indian epic tale, Kim, which is called the Mahabharata. And in that, there are five brothers who end up fighting 100 brothers, which is a story for another day. But between those five brothers, the middle brother is a really good archer, and he's really good at archery, and he's the best in the world, right? And so these five kids are being taught by their master, and the master says, "Today, I'm going to ask you to. I placed a makeshift bird in the tree, and I want to ask you to use your bow and arrow and pierce the eye of that bird." And so he calls upon the first brother, the eldest one, which should be the smartest one, is what we have thought about, and asks, "What do you see there?" And the eldest says, "I see the trees and the clouds, and then I see the bird there." And asks the same question to the second one, skips the third one, which is the best archer in the world, goes to the fourth and the fifth, and they all say, We see the trees, we see the branches, the leaves, and then there is a bird there. Then he calls upon the middle brother and he asks, and his name is Arjuna. Arjuna, what do you see there? Master, all I see there is the eye of the bird. And that brother then pierces the eye of the bird with his bow. And so I think what's important for me, and I ask myself this question every single day, Utkarsh, what is your eye of the bird? And if you can focus on that, it's a day well lived.
Oh, that is absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And what a glorious way to sum up and get to the end of a podcast on courage. Because
Beautiful.
if people wanted to work with you, learn more about you, and get some of your help in any way, shape, or form, what would that look like and where would they go?
So reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm most responsive on that. But yeah, find the journal. I think the journal is going to be a great way to guide yourself to beautiful things. Kim's going to put all the links there. But reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd love to. We have a 6-month program, Kim. It's called Burnout to Breakthrough, because something that I'm seeing a lot today happening, especially to tech leaders in the world. And so if you feel you're in a state where things are not working out, happy to support you over calls to make sure that you achieve the life that you dream of, and then the life that you work for.
Oh, that is just beautiful. Absolutely. If you want to find the eye of your bird, find the focus to go after what's really important, then this is your guy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That was so beautiful. And literally, again, I can't believe it's been, 56 minutes, because
Already?
I feel like we've just scratched the surface on the depth of conversation that you and I could have. But thank you for joining us and for being one courageous human being on this planet. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I truly enjoyed it, and hopefully listeners got some beautiful wisdom out of this. And go back to the episode, listen to it again, because it'll be worth for you to find your eye of the bird.
I love it. Thank you.